Let's talk about everyone's favorite subject, taxes. Today we're going to be talking about everything tax related when it comes to being an author, especially an author who owns a business and you have other branches of income as an author. So we're going to be talking about tracking everything. We're going to be talking about receipts, what it means if and when you are audited, the type of forms you'll need, where your income is coming from, all of that. So make sure you stay tuned for the entire video. I would also like to note, I am definitely not a professional when it comes to taxes. I just barely have a grasp on the subject. I'm not an expert. If you ever have any questions, do not ask me. I will probably give you the wrong answer. Ask a CPA or an adult that maybe has a better grasp on adulting than I do. But I figured I would make this video because I figure any form of information is better than no information, and in the description of this video I will also have some other resources that you can check out to give you some more clarity. I should also point out that everything I talk about in this video is related to the United States. I have no clue how taxes work internationally. Please don't ask me questions about it. I won't have an answer for you. Everything is related to the United States, and once again I will reiterate, I barely understand it myself, so probably best not to ask questions. I'm only stating the facts that I know, and if I don't know the answers, go Google it or ask someone more responsible than me. Hello everyone, my name is Mandi Lynn. I'm an author, book cover designer, and the creator of the Book Launch Planner. And let's just dive right into taxes. So first things first, you need to track everything. That means where your income is coming from and where you're spending your money, which is your expenses. So I have two different Google Sheets that I use to track that. I have my expenses Google Sheet and then I have my income Google Sheet. And I actually have a video where I go really in depth into how I use them exactly. But if you want to use these exact spreadsheets, I will have them linked down below so you can download them for free. And I also use the spreadsheet to calculate my paycheck. In that spreadsheet, I automatically have a little equation set up so you can take out 25% to pay your income tax. So what's most important about that is every time you write yourself a paycheck in order to, make some money off of your writing or your business, is that you put money aside for taxes. Now, when you work for an employer, they automatically take income tax out for you. That way, every year when you sit down to do your taxes, you either work with a CPA or you do H&R Block or TurboTax to calculate your taxes. And usually, if you're lucky, you get a return on your taxes and it's like extra spending money. Yay! But when you own your own business, no employer is taking out taxes. You are your own employer, so it's your responsibility to take money out for income taxes. This means if you only file taxes once a year, that you are paying a big chunk of taxes to the government. Now, if you don't put money aside every single month, a part of you will die a little when you see that number at the end of the year and realize how much money you owe. That is why it's super important that when you are calculating your paycheck for yourself, that you are always putting 25 to 30% aside to pay taxes later on. If you don't want to pay a big chunk every year, you can file for taxes quarterly, but there's a little bit of a different process to do that, and that's actually a process I'm trying to figure out right now. So again, don't ask me questions about it because I don't know how to do it quite completely yet, if that, words. Now, do you need to show receipts? Now, you should definitely be saving your receipts, whether that be digitally or physically. It's best to do it physically, by the way. As much as I love digital, sometimes things break and you lose stuff. So it's best to have things physically accounted for. But when you go and file your taxes, do you actually need to physically show your receipts? Now, the answer to that question is dependent on how well you track your expenses. If you do what I suggest you guys to do and you track all your expenses in a Google sheet, then no, you will never have to show a receipt unless you get audited. But if you track all your expenses in a Google sheet, you can just give that Google sheet to your accountant and they will do all the work for you. Now, where exactly is your income coming from? So as an author, as a business owner, odds are your income is coming from a few billion different places. Let's talk about the writing category first because it's all over the place. If you are someone who does expanded distribution, you have income coming in from a bunch of different places. You have KDP, which comes in through Amazon. That is usually the biggest chunk of your money. Then you have Ingram Spark, which handles the expanded distribution for your print books. And then if you do Draft to Digital, you have income coming from Draft to Digital for your expanded distribution for your ebooks. So that's 3 different places of income for one category, which is writing. For me, I have another category called cover design. I do all my cover design invoicing through PayPal, so that income is coming directly through PayPal. Another category for me is the book launch planner. If you guys didn't know, I have a planner I designed called the book launch planner. It helps you plan your book launch, duh. And then I also have writerly stickers that help you be more productive. So when I sell anything through the book launch planner store, it either goes directly into my bank account or it goes directly into my PayPal account. It's weird, I know. But that's another place where I have income coming from. If you are here on YouTube, then you might have income coming from YouTube. So that means that Google is actually writing checks for you for the little ads that appear on your YouTube videos. So that is another category of income. And if you're doing YouTube, you may occasionally be also doing sponsorships. So you have to account for that income as well. So your sponsorship payment will come in however you do your sponsorship payments. I personally have all my sponsors. I've literally had one sponsor, but they write me a check through PayPal. So again, it comes to me through PayPal. The last category, and if you're an author, you may have this category as well, is book signings. So that's not something we do anymore these days, but my hope is that we do in-person book signing events again, hopefully very soon. But when you do book signings, you need to report your income for those book signings as well. Even if it's cash, you have to report it. Now, the way I do it is that I have the Square app on my phone with that little card reader that plugs into my phone. So basically, I love it because I use the Square app to keep inventory of what books I physically have in stock as well. So it automatically tracks the inventory. It also automatically tracks how much I make per book sale, all of that jazz. It also automatically tracks sales tax, but that is again another topic and another thing to discover and tell you guys about eventually. But yes, so if you are selling books in person, you have to charge sales tax as well and pay for sales tax as well. And that sales tax you pay on a quarterly basis. But again, that's another topic. We're not going to dive into that today because we aren't doing in-person events right now. Okay, so now that we've talked about where our income is coming from, it's time to talk about how we figure out what forms we need. Now, when you are employed by a company, every year they give you a W-2. So as much as I would like to say W-2s magically manifest for you when you are self-employed, that is not the case. But however, we do have this other thing called a 1099. Now, I'm not gonna get into the technicalities of what the heck a 1099 is, but basically, it's like a W-2, but for when you're self-employed. So, when you work with Kindle Direct Publishing, which is Amazon, they will actually give you a 1099. Same with Google, which is YouTube. If you're a YouTuber, Google will give you a 1099 to report your income for that year. Both of those things are mailed to you, or you can opt out, so you can do it electronically and then you can grab it yourself on the back end when you go to like your profile and then tax forms and blah, 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 blah. Now, however, then we have Ingram Spark. And Ingram Spark does not give you a 1099. They are not nice like that. I have a lot of other reasons why I don't like Ingram Spark as well, but we're not gonna get into that. But what I'm trying to say is, the way you get through it is that you create a report for your publisher compensation for that year. So what I did was I went into my back end, I went to reports, and then I created a publisher compensation report for 2020. And that's how you figure out how much money you made through Ingram Spark in 2020. Now, if you're like me and a huge chunk of your money comes through PayPal, sometimes you can get a 1099 through PayPal and life is easy and joyous. But you only get a 1099 if you meet their thresholds. And I believe their thresholds, because I talked to PayPal on the phone. They said you have to make $200,000 in that year, and you have to have, I think it was 200 transactions. I think that's what it was. I can't really remember, so don't hold me to that. But you have to meet PayPal's threshold before they'll give you a 1099. Now, if you don't meet PayPal's threshold, the thing you have to do is that you basically do the same thing you did with Ingram Spark, where you create a report for the amount of income you made through PayPal for that year. Now, if you're like me, things get a little more complicated than that, and you have income coming from all over the places. So that is why I have the Excel sheets where on a monthly basis I break it down exactly where my income is coming from. That way I can just hand over my 1099s and the Excel sheet and hand it to my accountant. Now is also the time to talk about the importance of a business bank account. So, a lot of people will kind of drag their feet on getting a business bank account, but let me tell you why getting a business bank account will make your life a little bit easier. Because your business bank account is basically that Excel sheet that you're going to create to track everything. Now, as glorious and beautiful as that Excel sheet is, if God forbid you ever get audited by the IRS for your taxes that year, you can't hand them an Excel sheet and say, here's proof of everything. That's not gonna fly. You can make up numbers, you can make stuff up. It's not legit. However, what you can do is not only hand over your receipts, but you can also list out all your transactions that your business bank account had, because that is proof of all the coming and going of your money for your business, and that is a very legit way of proof. Yes. Now moving on, let's talk about deductions. So we have our income, which is our gross income. It's before taxes, it's before expenses, all of that. We have our income. And then what we have to do after that is we take out our expenses, and then what's left after that is what you tax. So ideally you want to have as many expenses as possible so you pay the least amount of taxes legally, is the key word there. Now, there are some things you can deduct and some things you can't deduct. That is a conversation you need to have with your CPA. But as far as authors go, it's pretty straightforward. Like, you can deduct the cost of your cover designer, you can deduct the cost of your editor, anything that you need to run your business. Like if you're a YouTuber, you can do the cost of your camera and your camera equipment, your lighting. All of that is considered expenses and deductions for your business. If you do in-person book signings, you can deduct the cost of the event and the cost of gas to get to the event, all those things. But you can only deduct it if you track it and if you track it truthfully, because if you bend the rules, that's when you get in trouble and that's when you get audited. Some other things you can deduct are your home office. If it is dedicated just to your writing, that is when things get a little fuzzy. But when you have a home office, you can deduct a portion of your mortgage as well as your internet payment. And basically, you can deduct any sort of publishing fees. You get the idea. Now, how much do you pay in taxes? This is where things get really complicated. The short answer is that you pay 25 to 30% in income taxes after expenses. And then after you take out expenses, and then after you take out your income tax, what you have left over is your net income, which is the amount you get to actually put in your pocket. I know. It's not fair, but that's how it works. Now, unfortunately, that's not the only tax that you'll find yourself paying, and that's something that I don't fully understand yet, but I do have a friend who does understand it. Vivian Reese is a friend of mine. She made a video, it was either last year or the year before, but either way, she made a video on taxes, and it goes way more in depth into what types of taxes you are paying as an author. I will link it down below. She talks about stuff like self-employment taxes, all that jazz. Highly recommend that video because she will enlighten you in ways I cannot. Lastly, let's talk about auditing because that's not a fun subject, but it's something to be aware of. What exactly would cause you to get audited? One big reason is if your business is repeatedly year after year spending more than what you make, because if you spend more than what you make, then the IRS cannot tax you. So if that happens year after year, they are going to come after you and be like, hey, what's up? But when you first own a business, it's pretty common that that happens anyways. So you can get away with it for like a year or two, maybe more. But if it keeps happening year after year, that's when they'll audit you and look deeper into what is going on. Another reason they can audit you is if you, for whatever reason, did some of your math wrong, then they will contact you with an audit, and then you'll see, oh my God, I wrote that number down wrong, and then it gets fixed, and it's relatively stressless if it's just a tiny whoopsie. You can also get audited if you deduct too many expenses, or if the expenses you are deducting are not business expenses. You get the idea. The IRS also does not like round numbers. If all the numbers you're reporting are perfectly even numbers, that's a red flag to them. And lastly, if you fail to report some form of income, they will come after you. They always know. I don't know how they know, but they always know. I don't say that from experience, I will say that. It's important to stay as truthful as possible, put all the information out there, and stay as organized as possible. Now, this is also the part where I'll give you the speech of the importance of an accountant, especially if you own a small business. Now, for a long time, I never used an accountant. Last year was actually the first year that my husband and I used an accountant. Before that, we always used H&R Block or TurboTax and thought that was the easiest, simplest way to do it. But it's really not, especially if you own a small business, because things get a little more complicated. And let me tell you why. And this is not small business related, but accountants can do things that TurboTax and H&R Block just can't. So an example of that is that when I used to work at my full-time job, I lived in Connecticut, but I worked in Massachusetts. Now, things get a little complicated when you have stuff like state tax and federal tax, because all of a sudden I was being taxed in 2 different states when I should have been only taxed in 1 state, but H&R Block and TurboTax can't quite figure that out, or if they can, we didn't know how to do it properly. So basically what it came down to was 1 year I paid state tax twice instead of only once, and we thought that was just the way it worked until I talked to my accountant, and my accountant was like, why'd you do that? And I was like, well, that's what you're supposed to do. And he said, no, that's not. And then we had to fill out a form to get a refund, which was great. But that's basically why I say go to an accountant if you can. It may feel like extra work, but you will realize when you just hand over the paperwork and let them do it, it's so much less stressful, and they know and understand things about taxes that I never will. And when you use an accountant, there's like way less fear of being audited because there's no fear of, oh my God, did I do that right? Because trust me, I have that thought all the time when it comes to being an adult and doing taxes. So I hope this video was helpful. Like I said, there are the Excel sheets that I mentioned many times linked down below. There are the resources I mentioned. Again, talk to a CPA. They are so smart. They will save your day. And don't talk to me about taxes. It's how it should go. I hope this video helped you, even if it was just a little bit. Maybe it helped clear things up, because I feel like sometimes people who are very knowledgeable about taxes still use the very big words and you still don't understand it, but people like me who are still a little bit clueless, I can dumb it down a little bit, even if I'm not covering the entire subject. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to let me know by giving it a thumbs up and commenting down below. Otherwise, I will see you guys all next week when we aren't talking about taxes anymore.